Hello folks, patch 12.10 Curse of Atal'Utek will be launching on August the 11th, which makes this a great time to dive into all the new features we can expect. The brand new zone is called the Coiled Isle, which is that mysterious island just off the coast of Suleiman, and with the teleportation mist dissipating, we're now able to head right over and take a visit. Now this is arguably not one but two zones, with the main above ground zone accompanied by a very large below ground vault called the Vaults of Atal'Utek. Starting with the above ground area, as you might imagine from a close neighbour to Suleiman, this is another troll themed area with very similar visuals, albeit with a lot of green poison pools. And no, those rivers are not fell, it's definitely poison. The zone has most of what you'd expect from a major patch zone, including a brand new reputation, Zul'Jara's forces, quests and rares. And contrary to what you might have seen online, flying is not restricted at all, at least in the above ground area, and you'll be able to use your skyriding mounts freely if you want to. At first glance, the zone does seem a little bit small, but fly around the facing mountain and there's a very large area behind that does open up. The Renown itself offers everything we'd expect, including the usual mid-expansion profession skill books, offering you a precious extra 10 points, great for catch-up or finishing off your profession leveling, along with 3 mounts, the Violet Back Skyfang at Renown 19, the Indigo Coiled Horror at 17, and a quest line to obtain the Spirit of Tok'Jara at Renown 10. And yes, there's also plenty of brand new troll-themed housing decor to collect. Rares in the new zone are going to work a little bit differently from the ones that we've encountered so far in the midnight launch zones, with a brand new feature called Curse Surges, which consists of rotating mini events around the island, which summon the rare, and which on its defeat will open up the other new feature called Cursed Fishing that allows you to fish up a variety of new reward and has its own dedicated reputation track and vendor. Moving on to the underground area, the Vaults of Atal'Utek, and this is a very large underground cave area which is accessed via WoW's new airlock system, meaning that it is in effect a separate zone, and as it's underground, this will be a no-fly area, though due to its very large size, ground mounts are thankfully still allowed, and there is a system of flight points and even little helpers to get us around, and these are going to be very much needed. As well as some more quests, this area will play host to the now standard open world group event. This consists of an always up series of mini events, which fill a bar to trigger the main event, which itself is a set of group events which then summon an elite boss. Now if this sounds a bit familiar to Void Assaults, honestly, that's because it is. Now Blizzard did do a couple of Play with the Blues test events for this, and honestly I was a bit disappointed by how few different events there were to do. But that said, Blizzard did make some changes to it after their first test, and I'm hopeful that we'll see some more iteration on the feature before the live release. But that's really hard to say, as it's not really testable outside of those Play with the Blue events. One new addition to it is that it does have its own progression tree, with a fairly extensive standalone talent tree that unlocks extra abilities and bonuses to make life in the vaults a bit better over time. There is also another open world only power system called the Corrosive Codex, which works throughout the open world and also in delves. And this works in a similar way to the Titan Disc Belt, albeit without having an extra gear item, in that you can collect a series of bonus abilities and then select 2 from the list. And these abilities will be collectible from basically doing things like delves, prey, and the more challenging elements of that open world event. Mount wise, as well as the Renown mounts, you can also get the Emerald Skyfang from completing patrols in the underground area. Patrols are another rotating bonus quest event, along with the Caustic Venom Fang, which is purchased from the new events currency, Corrosive Coins, Ruby Writhe, and Topaz Skyfang, which come from the new island rares. Expect those to have a similarly awful drop rate, as was the case with the Midnight Patch 12.0.0 ones. The vault also has a meta achievement, which will award you the Venomous Coiler mount. Now, before we go heading into that brand new zone, there will of course be a new campaign storyline, which will pick up where we left off with Zul'Jin and Zul'Jara in patch 12.07, which was actually chapter 1 of this new campaign. We don't currently know how this campaign will be paced out. Blizzard generally unlock everything up to the raid in the PTR, but that's often not the case on the live, where it gets split over a few weeks. And we're also going to be getting some new quests for the Argentina, along with the Harandar weekly event as well, and I just hope that the many bugs with the Harandar event have been resolved for this new patch. And that's it for the open world content. While I do like that this zone is connected to Eversong and Suleiman, I personally wasn't super excited by the new content, which follows much the same pattern as Dragonflight and the War Within's major patches, with a focus on weekly chore style meta quests, and the new open world event, at least as tested on the PTR, honestly felt like it lacked enough depth and variety to last out a full season. If you did enjoy the Void Assaults, I do suspect that you will enjoy this too, but I cannot help but feel that the post-Shadowlands open world content gameplay loop is starting to feel a bit stale and is in need of a bit of a rework. But of course, the thing that I know many of you are really waiting for is the main seasonal content, which is likely to land 1 week after the patch releases. The new raid is called the Venomous Abyss and has 8 bosses, and it's set in the vaults and follows that green poison theme, so I do hope that you like that aesthetic. But the raid is also going to see some very significant new changes, particularly to rewards. First of all, for LFR through to heroic difficulty, the Great Vault will now be awarding gear that is 1 full upgrade track higher than the boss gear drop. So LFR vaults will be rewarding champion, normal, heroic track, and hero myth track gear. And for the mythic raid, the vault rewards are also going to be buffed, with the first 6 bosses given fully upgraded 6 out of 6 myth track items from the vault, and the last 2 bosses awarding 9 out of 6 myth track items. And yes, you did hear that right. Basically, mythic raiders will be able to get some gear that is higher than the max upgrade track available, albeit in limited amounts. And that 9 out of 6 is also going to be applied to any very rare loot drops in the raid as well. The other very significant change is that the bonus rolls will now only cost 1 for raid bosses, similar to the other content. And yes, that does mean that bonus rolls are going to continue. The rolls will be available from week 1 via the Great Vault fallback system, so if you unlock 3 or more slots, you'll have the option of getting a bonus roll. Although this is now going to be separate from the Vault's pity currency, rendering it impossible to save up for a bonus roll over several weeks if you don't open 3 slots every week. On top of that, starting from week 8, you will also be able to get an additional bonus roll every week. But do be aware that this will be reduced to only getting 1 bonus roll every week. Although, with the reduced cost for raid bonus rolls, that means that this nerf really only affects Mythic Plus and Delves. And later on in the season, at a date that is yet to be announced, we'll be getting Ascendant Venom Stones, allowing us to upgrade our weapons trinkets, and now for this season, also next. For raid mounts, the Glory achievement will award the Crimson Venom Fang, and the final boss can drop the Primeval Sky Fiend on Mythic difficulty. Now, one other major change for this new season is that the open world bosses are being retired and replaced with a brand new feature called Lairs. This is essentially a separate 1 boss raid, available in all the usual raid difficulties, albeit LFR difficulty is rebranded to World difficulty to position it as the potential replacement for the missing world boss. And Mythic difficulty will also use the 15 to 25 man flex format that we saw in Spore Fall. Moving on now to Mythic Plus. And as you might expect, we can expect to get the 4 main launch dungeons that were not part of Season 1 of Midnight. That is Murder Row, Den of Nalarak, the Blinding Veil, and Void Scar Arena, along with a brand new dungeon for patch 12.10 called Altar of Fangs and 3 returning dungeons, including King's Rest, Ruby Life Pools and Temple of Sithralis. Now it is fair to say that I think this dungeon lineup did make some people's eyes roll a bit when it was announced. So it is very important to call out that pretty much all of the dungeons have had some degree of rework for the new season, with Temple of Sithralis in particular being very different to its BFA original. That said, King's Rest is still very linear. Beyond the dungeons themselves, Blizzard have also made some changes to boss and tank health, with the goal of placing a bit more responsibility onto the DPS. Essentially, DPS will be required to be fairly diligent about targeting the right NPCs in ad packs and doing all their interrupt duties, which will now often punish failure via damage downs rather than just one-shotting the tank. So this season is going to feel a bit different. That said, Blizzard are still targeting a similar overall level of difficulty to Season 1, which if they manage to pull it off, will be a very good thing, as Season 1 was of course one of the best ever Mythic Plus seasons. Beyond the usual gear rewards, which really aren't changing much for this season, the new Keystone Legend and 1% achievements will be returning, with a new mount for 1% and another saddle from the Legend achievement. And along with that, the Keystone Master mount is the Breath of Blight and the Keystone Hero mount, the Breath of Ruin. And the brand new dungeon also has its own final boss mount drop called the Writhing Brood, which is only available in Mythic difficulty. Delves are also getting an update with 2 brand new delves, Naldor Isle and Ring of Glory, both of which are very open delves, albeit Ring of Glory does take place in a relatively small area, maybe about 50% bigger than the Grudge Pit. And of course, there will also be the usual seasonal nemesis delve called Venomfall, which will also reward a brand new mount, their perfect Soul Crusher, for defeating the challenge boss on double ? difficulty. And there's also a corroded Soul Crusher that's unlocked from the Delver's Journey, which will be much easier to obtain. Similar to the War Within Delves, Valeria's level cap is going to be increased to 80, and her curios will all be reset with a brand new set to collect, along with a brand new poison trait as well, which will include a set of new collectible poisons to add a little bit more customizability to our Delve companion. And as promised, Prey is also getting an update with 4 brand new bosses being added alongside the existing pool. Now, in testing, these new bosses were only available in Nightmare difficulty, which felt a little bit odd, and I'm not sure if that will actually carry on to live as well, or if it was just a PTR bug. And there's also a refresh of the Torment affixes, which thankfully have no sign of those annoying task-style torments which ask you to go off and kill things at random. Prey is being extended into the new zone, with an increase in the number of preys you can do every week, up to 15. Albeit for the new zone, instead of a normal difficulty prey, it gets 2 hard and 1 nightmare difficulty instead. Prey is also getting its own version of a Delver's Bounty map, called Afflicted or Tormented Souls. These will be lootable from bountiful delves and can be used on your next prey to open up some better rewards. There is also an additional boss, Rakhala, on the Coiled Isle. To summon this boss, there's a new option to have the Nightmare Prey affixes always active on the Cursed Isle, and this will drop a new currency, Ossified Relics, which can be turned in to make the boss spawn, and this has a chance to drop a new mount, the Hexflame Reaver. Along with this, there's also another new mount for completing the Season 2 Preyseeker's Journey, called the Prey Hunter's Fury. PvP, as always, is getting the usual seasonal refresh of gear, along with 2 new mounts, the Venomous Gladiator's Gordrake and the Vicious Light Bloom Boar. New content-wise, there's also a new training arena option where you can fight in arenas with NPCs, and the queuing system is getting a new Deserter-style debuff to deter queue skipping, which is where someone refuses a queue after it pops. This latter is likely intended to make it a bit harder for people to exploit weaknesses in the battleground queue system. And the new debuff will start at only 1 minute, but will ramp up with repeated refusals within a time window. And the length of that time window, as you might imagine, Blizzard have not shared. In a recent developer interview, this new debuff was also said to be coming for PvE queues as well. But that doesn't appear to be the case on the PTR at the moment, so I'm not sure entirely what is going on with that. Stepping back and taking a look at the whole season, and in my view, raiding has been badly in need of some attention for quite a long time now. And I do think that the changes to the Great Vault will be very welcome for players who aren't massive fans of Mythic Plus. Being able to get Mythtrack gear from the Heroic Raid will greatly lessen the pressure to do Mythic Plus and will hopefully address the widespread criticisms that Mythic Plus gearing is somehow too good compared to Raid. That was never true, of course. In reality, Raid gear hasn't been good enough, especially since the significant regression in Raid rewards that accompanied the launch of Shadowlands, and hopefully this is just the start of a wider refresh for the raiding format. Mythic Plus only players will be disappointed by the restoration of a gap in gear item levels between Mythic Plus and Mythic Raid, but it is worth keeping in mind that 9 out of 6 gear will be somewhat constrained. Defeating the last 2 bosses in Mythic is no picnic, meaning that relatively few players will hit those heights until the late season. And even then, the overall item level gap will be at most between 2 and 3 item levels. That said, I do expect quite a bit of pushback from the community, and I would not be surprised if we end up seeing some late season gear buffs for Mythic Plus. I would have liked to have seen Prey get a bit more attention. The launch set of bosses for me did feel a bit samey over time, and I'm not sure that just adding 4 extra bosses will be enough to freshen that up. The addition of an extra 1 boss raid from the start is a very interesting move from the dev team, and those of us who get frustrated with WoW boss lag will probably welcome this. But at the same time, I'd personally have preferred to see the WoW devs address the performance issues from which that lag stems, because the world boss is not the only source, as we've seen quite a few times with the open world events. Moving on to player housing, and there are a ton of new updates, which I have covered in a more in-depth video, which I will link below, but it does include 3 new housing levels, taking us up to a max level of 12, giving us a ton of more space into which to build, along with larger housing exteriors, the ability to add pets to our home, and blueprints, which will allow us to save and restore our room designs, and even a full house layout. And yes, those blueprints can be shared with other players. And if you need a bit of help or inspiration to design your interiors, there's a bunch of cool new themed rooms which will offer some great starting points. And that's it for the main content additions, but there is also quite a few new quality of life and system updates to run through as well. Guilds are getting a new Discord integration, allowing you to connect your guild chat to Discord chat channels. And the cooldown manager is getting a fresh update, which will finally add the ability to track racial abilities, trinkets, and even your potion cooldowns. Friendly nameplates are finally also getting some new options, including an option to show names only and to colour the names by the player's classes. And the ping system has some brand new options as well to control how it is used. And for open world fans, the in-game coordinate system, which has up till now only been accessible via add-ons, now has a default option to show on the main map, along with a brand new chat command to create map pins from coordinates. Probably the biggest quality of life improvement though is what Blizzard describe as multiple updates to character combat flagging, all of which are intended to reduce that annoying occasion where you get locked into combat against non-existent enemies, which is probably one of the longest standing annoying bugs in World of Warcraft. It may have taken the dev team 21 years to do it, but certainly I'll be glad to see those issues fixed at last. And staying in quality of life, there is now a back button for the achievements UI, along with better grouping of currencies and an account-wide auto-loot setting. And finally, Blizzard have also reworked how add-ons interact with buffs and debuffs, something that will add some new functionality for add-ons, most notably better filtering. But at the same time, it's also going to make it a bit harder for add-ons to find workarounds for the restrictions that were placed in combat add-ons, meaning that users of some of the more advanced new combat add-ons may experience a bit of a loss of functionality, while more visually focused UI add-ons are going to see some gains. And yes, this will likely mean that there will be plenty of issues with some add-ons in patch day until the authors get fully caught up on the changes. Overall, I think the new patch will be a bit of a mixed bag. The open world offerings for me lack the excitement and innovation of Undermine, and I do think that making an event that was so similar to the Void Assaults may well prove to be a bit of a mistake. And having seen the community reaction to Void Assaults, I'd be very surprised if the WoW dev team are not already a little bit worried about this. But on the other hand, Raiders do have a lot to look forwards to, and if the dev team do manage to build on the success of the first Mythic Plus season, this side of the game will land very well indeed. This new release is also the first real opportunity for the dev team to show the player base that they are starting to focus a bit more on improving the overall quality of the releases, especially at launch. Ever since Dragonflight, far too many of the patches, big and small, have suffered from an excessively high level of high impact bugs, which has led to a bit of a backlash from the player base, especially for patch 12.05. The patience of the player base is clearly running out fast in this front. Realistically, patch 12.07 was too soon for the dev team to deliver any major changes on this front, so this new patch may well be the one that sets the tone for the rest of Midnight release quality wise. I just hope that the dev team do manage to deliver what the player base have a right to expect from what is a premium priced product. It doesn't need to be perfect, but it does need to be good enough, something which far too often hasn't been the case for many of the WoW dev team's headline features in the last few years. And that's it for patch 12.10. I'd love to hear what excites you most. Are you looking forward to exploring the new zones, getting those new mounts, or even just diving into Mythic Plus? Comment down below. If you found this update helpful, entertaining, or even just plain annoying, then let me know by hitting that like icon. And if you want to support my channel to grow and help me to make more of these videos along with other content, then hit that subscribe button right now before you forget. If you don't want to miss out whenever I release a new video, then as well as subscribing, you can follow me on social media for updates, the links in the description below as well. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.